All right, we're live. What's up, guys? What is up, man? We got a heck of a show, but thank you for coming on and watching some Deck Talk podcast. But guys, we're gonna have one heck of an episode. We finally got somebody that's from up north that we're gonna be able to talk some huge smallmouth, and then I was able to get in contact with this gentleman, and we're going to talk some smallmouth fishing, talk about some forward facing sonar, talk about some baits, and possibly making some baits and stuff. But guys, if you don't know, I'm Colin Burnett.
And I'm Norman Lee. That's right, Colin. Man, we have been looking forward to this episode for a while, man. It's going to be exciting talking to this cool cat. But anyway, we got some business to take care of first. This episode is brought to you by Riff Headgear. Riff is designed utilizing an innovative double-layer fabric system which provides an ongoing ventilation and ultralight comfort. Riff isn't only protecting you, but it's protecting your way of life as an outdoorsman for the future. Whether you work, play, hunt, or fish, Riff has brought sun protection to another level, creating headwear that is comfortable, practical, and effective, ensuring your safety and giving you a peace of mind. Get your Riff headgear today. Go to www.riffmask.com. Use that discount code DECKTALK10 for your instant savings. Again, that's riffheadgear.com. Don't forget, make sure to use that discount code DECKTALK10. Now, I tell you what, Colin, you're spot on, man. We are looking forward to this episode. We finally got somebody from the north on tonight, and let me just tell you something. He is a smallmouth demon. All right, but anyway, let's get started with this thing, man. Tonight's guest, well, let's just say he is a pure smallmouth stud. Whether he's on or off the water, he enjoys sharing his experiences, knowledge, and passion for the sport with other anglers. You can follow his on the water adventures as he films some of the most epic and entertaining videos on YouTube, along with his brand new podcast, Uncharted Waters. Undeniably one of the best smallmouth fishermen from the north, Benjamin Nowak.
Thank you. That intro is way too kind. I appreciate
it. He usually does a pretty good job on that.
That is awesome. Thank you very much. No, guys, I'm excited to be on here talking fishing. Colin, you called me a couple weeks ago and we're like, hey, you want to hop on a podcast and talk smallmouth? And I love it. I appreciate it.
Well, and the thing about it is we this week we already had booked up because we're supposed to have Eric Lopez from the Bassmasters come on, but then Norman and I got to thinking, we're like, man, let's just go down there. So we're going to be in their conference room doing a podcast tomorrow. It won't be live. So we're going to figure out the ins and outs of how they plan for having the classic. So
behind the scenes, what goes on to getting everything set up to run that awesome show they put on.
That's amazing.
And so we're going to actually air that one the Thursday before the classic. So they're trying to get everybody pumped up for the classic and stuff like that. And but when we moved it, this date came available, and then I was like, all right, Benjamin, do you want to hop on? And you're like, heck yeah.
No, I'm excited for that episode about the classic because I think there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we don't even really know about, right?
Oh, it's
so many people that work on it. And I mean, from the coordinating of just even finding the city that has the funding or finding the city that has the setup.
And,
man. And space, you got to be close enough to the lake. You have to have an expo center that's big enough with a draw. It's going to be so cool to hear that.
Colin and myself had the privilege of being able to go last year as members of the media, and we got to go behind the scenes a lot where the regular spectators couldn't go. And I mean, if I could put it into words, just what it takes behind the scenes to put that on. I mean, I've never been to a Super Bowl, but I would have to compare putting the Bassmaster Classic on with all the electronics and all the pyrotech stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It's just amazing what they do for the classic, and kind of, I mean, in my eyes, it's one of the biggest shows that I think you could actually go watch live.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's wild, especially
yeah,
for being free.
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
You know,
And
and
that's the thing.
for the viewers, for the fans, it doesn't cost anything to get in.
nope.
And I mean, for the show that you get, it's like I compare it to like I don't know if anybody else has gone to a Garth Brooks concert. I mean, it's a show and a half, and then I compare the classic to a Garth Brooks concert because
Oh yeah.
always something going on. It's so exciting and stuff. But yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna be heading. Are you heading to Tulsa for that?
I'm so back and forth. I could fly into Houston and then drive up, but flights to Tulsa are like $800. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's a I think it's like a 9 hour drive for
Yeah,
us
I
from
think it's about
Chattanooga.
9-10 hour
So,
drive.
I got you.
so but
That'll be cool. I want to go. Grand Lake is going to be an incredible venue. Like every event there is just so cool because I hate to say this. I hope it's not one on forward facing. I want to see those guys throwing big spinner baits and
Yeah.
like catching fish shallow in the dirt. And I don't know. And for
Yeah.
me, like that's what I think of when I think of Grand Lake. And I hope those guys are up around the docks and in the dirt and
oh yeah, and I
looking for
mean
spawning fish and pre-spawners. Like,
yeah, and that's I mean we had Jimmy Houston on here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
And so we asked him about it, and he said that he thinks that's what it's going to be that time of the year. Uh, he said people will catch them on forward facing, but he said majority of your big fish is. He says if they're not throwing a spinner bait, they're going to be missing out.
I love
So,
it.
but yeah, well, how has I know you had a pretty big year? What I guess what you had a kid here recently.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was.
it's not recently. I mean, but it's been what about a year and a half ago?
Yeah. So
How's the family doing?
everyone's great, man. Like, I it's hard to compare it, right? Because I didn't have a kid. My first daughter was born in 2020. Then I had another daughter born in 2021, I think. So pretty close together. But
Yeah,
like, you still have to get used to the lifestyle of having a kid. Because I would go fishing whenever I wanted. So like, this last year was the first year I felt myself like really adjust to having kids and a family and like understanding how to balance that priority.
right.
And then like this year I felt was probably my best year in the past few as it goes or as it relates to fishing and creating content and like finding that balance while still maintaining a really good home life. So this
Right.
was a great year, and I'm looking forward to 24. Like we're iced up now, but I'm looking forward to it.
How
Right.
many days do you get a chance to get out and actually hit the lake and film?
I would say maybe 15 to 20 days a year I'm on the water. It might be a little more than that. I think I posted like 14 on the water videos last year.
Okay.
So I try to get as much fishing content done when I can go.
Right.
Yeah.
This year is going to look different. So instead of having just like a random weekend and going fishing, I am fishing like a small tournament series in the state. So
That's cool.
it'll be like I'll have some days where I'm like set aside, okay, 3 days for this tournament, 3 days for this tournament, where I can really start to like dial in when I'm out there and kind
Now,
of
when,
plan.
right when you're doing the tournament series, are you going to run some cameras so you could actually
Yeah.
get video footage of your tournament?
Yeah, so I'm working with Omnia to kind of promote their Premium Pro app while I'm doing it. But one of the big things about the Omnia app is like you have all these cool features now, like bottom hardness and
Oh,
like where the grass is located. They have Navionics built in, CMAP built into their app. So like I'm going to promote all these features, but also talk about and take people along with how I break down a lake for fishing a tournament, because like
Right.
as you guys know, fun fishing versus tournament fishing is like a totally different
Totally.
world.
different ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not going out just like, man, I hope I catch 14 pounds today, like for fun. No, like someone's gonna catch 14 to 15 pounds to win this tournament. Like that's my benchmark, and I got to find
Yeah.
it. So it's a different mindset, and it's just gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited. I haven't fished tournaments in probably 4 or 5 years.
That's cool.
Right. And that's and it's I know like I fished tournaments for I'd say probably about 7, 8 years. And then the last partner that I had kind of burnt me out on it just by his demeanor and stuff like that. I mean, I won't go into details, but you kind of know where
Yeah,
I'm
we know
going
what.
with.
Yeah,
And so, but I haven't fished a tournament myself. And well, Norman and I fished last year. We fished a couple tournaments last year, just a 3-fish tournament. And at that 3-fish tournament, we knew going in that it had to be 11, 12 pounds to even win.
yeah.
So,
It's just a totally different mindset. Like similar to what you said, I kind of got out of tournaments, and I fished like an occasional one here and there, but
right.
I got out of it because I wanted to do the YouTube stuff, and it got to the point where, especially when I started filming and doing that tournament stuff, it was 2015 ish, 2016. Like it was almost 10 years ago now, and YouTube wasn't as, I want to say, almost not as accepted. So like as you were putting content out there, fishing local bodies of water, guys weren't super receptive to it. So
Nah.
you'd always get those weird guys that would give you a hard time at the boat ramp, or they'd kind of come in on your spot because they know you're fishing an area and they want to be jerks, right? And I was like,
Right.
man, I just don't even want to be part of this anymore. So I
Nah.
got out of it, and now that YouTube is where it's at, like it provides a really cool opportunity to kind of showcase a different aspect of the sport that I wasn't able to showcase before.
Yeah, we've noticed, like, especially like when we have cameras going. My boat is like charcoal gray and red, but so it's more incognito. Norman's boat, I call it the banana boat because
I was gonna say, I saw in the intro,
bright,
it's yellow, isn't it?
bright yellow. Yeah, and so I mean, you see that sucker from a mile away, and but like when we have the cameras going, we'll notice like people will come. They're more like they see the camera and they're like, ooh, and so they try to go in. Well, they're filming, so they have to be on some fish, and so we. But we got one dude. We went down. We went to Headwaters and fished Headwaters. Had the cameras going, and we had 2 people come up seeing the cameras going, and I'm like, I wonder if these guys. I was like, they didn't know who we were or anything like that. They just seen that we had cameras going.
Yeah,
and
they're like, they have to be on fish if
oh
there's
yeah,
cameras.
and the thing is like that was like the first hour that we have ever been on Headwaters, so we didn't know anything.
It's funny because like you almost can call it the wrap boat effect too, right? Like a camera now is like what a wrap boat used to be, where if a guy has a boat wrap, like, man, he's probably pretty good. He's probably on fish. We're going to roll in just a little bit tighter than I would a normal person.
Yeah. And you say, and it's funny, like when they drive by, their hand automatically goes to their unit.
Dude.
For yeah. But how you fish down here on Chickamauga.
Yep.
And
Jack. Yeah.
And have they taken you out on Gunnersville yet?
So I fished a rattle trap open on Gunnersville like 4 or 5 years ago with my buddy Shea Baker. That was pretty cool. But I sucked. I did terrible. I didn't really know what I was doing, but man, that place is cool.
Was that Extreme Bass Trail, a rattle trap tournament?
I think Rattle Trap put it on.
A rattle trap put that one on?
Yeah, they do that. I think every year or every 2 years or something.
It was like February, like mid-February. They had a rattle trap open, and it ended up getting one on like a 1/4 ounce, or like the smallest trap they made, and it was like these guys throwing it on a ferry one in Mud Creek, and essentially we're pretty sure the reason that won it was because literally like you'd cast your rattle trap out and you like hear another rattle trap like coming through the water. Those fish had to be so keyed into like.
So, but how? Because I've never fished up north. It's a bucket list deal that I want to try to go do.
You guys got to come up to Michigan. Just come up.
And
that'll be awesome trip.
Yeah.
But how, besides seeing it on TV, we do know that, I mean, it's deep, clear water. But we do know, I mean, was it Champlain that is like shallow or shallower?
Yeah.
So is there any comparisons from up north to what it is down here?
No.
And it's just
when you cross like into Tennessee, it's a different world. Like the mountain lakes and like
Right.
having the hills and the big reservoirs. Like our reservoirs are like a couple hundred acres, like, or a couple thousand acres. Like they're small.
Right.
It's not at all the same. You can apply some of the things but we fish a lot of glacial bodies of water, like super deep, really clean water. Champlain's sort of the same. You have really deep north end with pelagic smallmouth that are following bait. But down there, like the biggest thing and the hardest thing that I had to understand was that these fish are super, like, you guys, how do I say this? If you get 10 bites in a day down there, like you did pretty well that day. Like if you did get 10 bites up here, like you're going to weed through a bunch of smaller fish and they might not be giants, but kind of a rough day. Like I remember I went and fished a Sneaky Lake with Caleb. He's like, we might get like 5 bites today. And he's like, if we do, it's going to be a phenomenal day. And we didn't. We didn't get 5 bites.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just a different thought process when you get down to those lakes. And then obviously, like, you have different pieces of cover, different types of cover and structure. The way that people talk about bodies of water down there is so much different. When I went to that Rattle Trap Open, guys are like talking about the drains and fishing the inside grass lines and talking about, different things that guys up here just don't have that vocabulary yet. Like we're like in our infancy, where Gunnersville is like the most famed lake in the country.
Right.
When we see the smallmouth from the north, I mean, you watch the BASS, you watch the Bass Pro Tour when they go up to the northern lakes catching the smallmouth up there compared to the smallmouth we have down here look like they're from a different planet.
Well, they look like footballs is what it is.
The smallmouth, and just almost they look as high as they are long in some cases. And why do they? I mean, why does this northern smallmouth get so beefy? They look massive,
especially on the Great Lakes. You notice this a ton where you get just big bulb football fish. You look at Champlain smallmouth that are pelagic bait fish. Foragers or whatever, like there you're going to be your longer, skinnier fish. Like a 4.5 pounder is going to be a really big one. On the Great Lakes, where these fish have goby, which are super bottom oriented, these smallmouth, they don't have to be aerodynamic. They just have to be able to withstand the craziness that is.
Right.
So, I think that's the biggest difference.
And that was one thing, because I was going to ask you, do you tell a difference from a lake that has the gobies in it to the lakes that do not?
Oh, yeah.
And can you explain, because a lot, again, like you're the first northern person that we've had on here, but so we might ask some kind of redundant questions that might, with that, I mean, we don't really... that we may not know, but for our viewers, like we've got 900 on right now.
That's crazy.
And can you explain like what is a goby?
So if you've ever seen a sculpin, I know you guys have sculpin and you have darters in your bodies of water. They're basically like small, boneless creatures that just kind of scavenge the bottom. A goby is very, very, very similar to a sculpin, except it doesn't have like the 2 big wings off its ears. Right. The big thing about a goby is that a lot of those times you're going to find these small areas, and these gobies will be in like on reefs or on rock piles in moderately shallow water. So you can pretty much look at a body of water and be like, okay, there should be some gobies there. There should be some gobies there. They're not necessarily everywhere on your lake. The other big thing is like a goby feeding, or fish that feed on gobies look totally different than fish on a northern body of water that don't have gobies. Like those northern fish are similar to yours. They're long, skinny, have a big fantail, and they're like pelagic. They will follow those bait fish.
Right.
On Great Lakes, they're super bottom oriented for the most part, and so you'll still have a move on you and leave on you because that's a smallmouth. But a lot of times, goby feeders are a little bit more stationary.
Right. Do y'all have, because I know like our waters around here, like let's say Lanier and stuff like that, they have smallmouths, but they also have a lot of spots.
Yeah, thank God we don't. It would turn into Watts Bar, I fear. We would just have mean mouth everywhere.
Main mouth everywhere. Yeah.
Thank God we don't yet. I don't want someone to try and experiment on our lakes and put in some spots because that would just decimate them. But
Oh yeah, they destroy. I mean, people they don't realize like they will like
they'll
destroy the
outcompete anything.
population of a smallmouth.
Yeah, they'll outcompete a smallmouth. They'll outcompete anything, and then you
Yeah,
get a mixing, and then you're done. Like once they start, getting
breeding.
mean mouth, you're done. Those lakes.
Yeah.
Well, a few years ago,
Have you got into fishing with the flogger at all?
yeah, I hate the
Yeah.
flogger. It's cool. It's very very cool, but it's miserable. Like
It,
it's
it,
cool to keep your head down there and like watch them eat because essentially what it does is like it just takes all the surface ripples off. So like on a
right.
lake where it's like clear, but you can't see in it because you have surface ripples, you drop that thing down there and it's like looking in an aquarium.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
very
man.
very cool.
Almost like going under the water diving with a mask on, right? So
Exactly.
it just clarifies everything so you can see the fish in 20 foot of water and be able to drop it on its head almost.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'm the worst bed fisherman. I don't have very good eyes when it comes to like locating beds or locating fish. We fish some pretty clean water. We were going down the bank. Well, not a bank, but we were going down the shallow flat, and my buddy's like, "You see that bed?" I'm like, "No, dude, I don't see it. It's got to be less than like 6 foot of water." I'm like, "Dude, I don't see it." He's like, "I swear there's a bed there." I'm like, "There's no bed. There's no fish. It's just a dark spot. Like, keep on moving." So I troll over to this area where he says there's a bed. And it is right at my feet. I'm like, "Dude, I told you there's no bed there." I drop that flogger down, and I'm like, "Oh, damn it. There's a
There
bed
is a
right there.
bed.
There's a bed there, and there's a fish right in the center of it."
That's
Yeah,
funny.
that's one thing that I was talking to Caleb, and when we were out fishing and stuff, and he was like, "You'll see, it just looks like it just looks like big old rocks that are down there, and you'll
Yeah.
drop your bait, and you'll just see that the rock just move a hair." He said it's not much, but you just see them; they move a hair, and you're like, "That's a big one." And he's like, "And that you're doing that in like 40, 50 foot of water," and I'm like, "You that I mean, being up, you fished
It's
here, and we don't have that kind of water here."
no, it's different. It's way, way different. Like when it's easy bed fishing, you'll get these big emerald green spots. So like a lot of our bodies of water are kind of like they're clear, but they're kind of green. They have a green tint to them.
Right.
And then when they're making a bed, it's just like this emerald green, like bat signal of where the bed is. It's
Yeah.
so much fun when they're good on bed. And, like you can see, and Alex Rudd and I caught it a couple times where you'll see them actually like making the dust cloud, like making the beds, and you can just
Right.
catch as many as you want. It's
No,
so much fun.
will they bet on top of big rocks and boulders?
So a lot of times the best bedding areas is like when you have some sort of broken up bottom, like sand with like shell in it, and then obviously like boulders or some sort of cover to kind of get behind. But what I've learned over the years is like when you think of smallmouth, you think of rock. You don't want like a gravel bottom or like a rock bottom. They just won't bed in it. They'll find
Right.
that soft bottom to dig that out.
The reason I was
Right.
asking that is years ago, I was on Eufaula fishing a tournament and right off the river channel, and this had to be in about 80 foot of water. There was a big cypress tree that came up and it was cut off right at the surface line, or just below the surface line, about 2 foot under. And in the bedding time of the year on Eufaula, and there is actually a fish that was bedding right in the top of this big cypress tree in about 80 foot
That's
of water. She
crazy.
had her
Yeah.
bed in the middle of this big cypress tree on the top of it in 80 foot of water. And I mean, it blew my mind when I seen it, and I had to stop and watch just to make sure what I was seeing. But she was actually bedding on the top of a cypress tree in 80 foot of water right off the river channel. And that's kind of why I asked if they were bedding the rocks in like 20 something foot of water because of that. Now, of course, rocks is different than a cypress tree. Cypress tree is probably a lot softer and stuff like that. You could probably get stuff in there, but that
That's
really blew
That's
me.
crazy.
crazy.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Well,
We'll get
I
it.
mean, with small or like with largemouth here, I mean, they will bed. I've seen them bed up on the lower unit of a motor. and marinas that they were bedding up on the lower unit. And I called, I took a picture of it because I mean the lower unit was, I mean it was at 8-10 inches below the water, but it was in 12 foot of water, but it bedded up on, and I was like, what is, I could, and I took pictures of it and I sent it to Caleb and I was like, look at this, and he says, oh man, you want to see that, you need to go to such and such marina and you'll see them all over in that thing. And I'm like, it just blew my mind. Like we've
That's
seen them like
crazy.
bedding up on like stumps, like top of stumps. They'll, if you like, let's just say like you're going into Soddy Creek or something like that, and there's the back part of it has a bunch of stumps. If you go and like you just troll through it, and you'll see stumps, and then as you get close, you'll see one just dart off on it. But if you're really paying attention, you can see them, spot them to where they'll bed right up there on the stump. And if they're on the stump, they're easier to catch. Matter of fact, I mean,
Now I've seen that all the time when it's shallower water. You pull up into a stump field in 3, 4, 5 foot of water. I've seen them bedding all the time in stumps like that. But when I seen this again, this cypress was cut off 2 foot below the surface, and it was in my transducer was reading 80 foot right where the cypress tree was, right on the side of the river channel, and she was actually bedding right in the top of where it was cut off, right below the surface. And I'm like, damn, I mean, I sit there and just watched her for. I didn't want to try to mess with her. I just sat there and watched her for about 5 minutes just to kind of watch her and make sure I was actually seeing what I thought I was seeing. Cause I mean,
That's
that's
crazy.
it's probably the last time I've ever seen something like that. But yeah, an 80 foot of water, couldn't believe it, bedding right in this top of a cypress tree.
yeah.
That is crazy.
So we got a question for you. When forward facing sonar, did it change the game up north more, do you think, than it did down south?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're seeing it down there and guys are catching them, but like up here where you have pelagic smallmouth. So when I first got it, I kind of had it to myself for a handful of years until LiveScope came out, which is like 2019, 2020 ish. Um, Dude, you could just go around and you'd see one swimming, and it was like they'd never seen a bait ever in their life. Like throw a deep diving crankbait, get it a couple feet above their head, and like it was immediate.
Yeah.
Now it's not like that. Like, but you, that's why you see it dominate so much up here in the north. Like on St. Clair, you will not see a guy win anymore without forward facing. On St. Lawrence, like these guys are taking it to a level where smallmouth are so vulnerable because they are nomadic baitfish eaters. They'll come up and investigate that thing, and it's really easy to imitate a baitfish with a small
Right.
minnow, and they're aggressive. So yeah, it totally changes the game. One of the craziest. So before live scope, Caleb was up here, and we figured out a bite where you could sink a jerk bait down in 25 plus foot of water. Like you'd weight a megabass 110, and it would sink, and you'd sink it down to these fish, and you'd be able to fish it. Sorry, you'd be able to fish it to these smallmouth that were basically suspended out there on pre-spawn, and you couldn't get them to eat hardly anything else. But you sink that jerk bait down, and it was crazy. Now that's like a normal thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, because I've had it on my boat maybe not quite a year, and because I was like, I grew up beating banks in Tennessee. That's all, and I've caught fish. I've caught a lot of fish. I've caught big fish, small fish, and I'm like, I ain't going out there on these ledges with everybody else. I was like, I'm not doing it. And then I finally talked myself into it. Well, I think my brother in law actually helped, and he goes out fishing with me ever so often. But he was like, hey, you just got a profit share from work. He said, why don't you go and get it? He said, it ain't going to cost you anything. And that was all that it took. And so I got it. But it's been amazing to realize like how many fish are really there that, and you're like, I would have never thought, like I would go to a point and I would scan this point knowing that I'm it's good for at least one fish, maybe two on a good day. And then as soon as I put that active target down in there, scan it, and I'm like, there's like 50 of them here. And I'm like, golly, it's just amazing to me. You're
Yeah,
able to learn so much and behavior
Yeah.
wise.
yeah.
And
And
so,
Colin and I always talk. Before Forward Facing Sonar, of course, you go down a bank and just bang the bank. You're basically fishing things you could see on the bank, never realizing that how many fish is literally straight out in front of you, or even on the other side of the boat from what you're fishing. And
yeah,
now with Forward Facing Sonar, you could actually see what you've been missing all these years when you're fishing the bank or banging timber on the bank, bagging rocks on the bank. There's fish literally straight out from you and straight off the other side of the boat that you've been missing all these years. But now with Forward Facing Sonar, it shows you what you've been missing that you didn't even know was there.
Yeah,
yeah,
and the other thing is, I think it's going to have a much bigger impact on your fish than it has on our fish, at least in the short term, because there's so many more anglers, but also because our smallmouth are so nomadic just by nature. Like your largemouth, yeah, they get off the bank, and I'm sure there's a bunch of population of fish that never got fished for before, but now everyone can do it because it's really
Yeah,
not that hard to pull up on a point and be like, okay, there's some largemouth off to the side of the point and set on it today.
right,
yeah,
Like with smallmouth, they were almost catchable before. Now they're just more accessible. But like our fish aren't going to be as near as impacted as your fish that
right,
were near impossible to catch. And
right.
now it's like, okay, I'm just going to go out here to this drain where it meets the main lake and, you know, look for them swimming around feeding on big balls of shad. So,
Yeah. Well, see, and I was out, I guess, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and I was fishing this point. This creek channel comes in, and it has a big old rock bluff on the point, on the like the front or the upstream part of it had a big bluff, and so
yeah.
I'm fishing it, and I reached down to like change rods, and I hit my foot pedal, right, and so it turns it out towards 60 foot of water, and I see like in 9 foot of water, I see these two big old just blobs just right there, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so I threw out there, and I think one of them was like a 7 pounder. I caught a 7 pounder out in the middle of the channel, and I'm like, I would have never, if I didn't even accidentally hit my foot pedal, I wouldn't have ever figured it out. And so, of course, like when it comes to all that, like the forward facing sonar, I got to call Caleb and be like, man, this is what's going on. And he says, yeah, he's got it down. And that to where he knows like when they're in like a circle. He said they'll always go like in a circle pattern, and he says I know like when they get. He says from day to day they'll bite at a certain area. That certain area might move, but once I know that they get into that, I find out that area, and once they're getting into it, he says that's when I'm like, uh, and
Caleb's next level.
yeah,
Caleb is insane. So I'll give you a quick Caleb story as well. Caleb came up here and caught a 7 pounder 2 years ago, which like I've not caught a 7 pounder. Like I've never seen a 7 pounder until he caught one. Um, we were pulling up into this pocket and we knew it set up right. And as we're rolling into this thing, he sees a fish follow his hair jig. He's like, dude, something's happening. Like these fish are starting to get in here. Like this is the bite window right now. And I'm like, okay. And so we kind of dismissed him and we're rolling down the bank and he catches like a 4 pounder and I catch like a pretty decent one. And then he like makes this really long cast with his hair jig and catches a 7 pounder. And he's like, dude, I don't know why, but I just noticed the way that these fish were rotating through this pocket. Like there's a bite window that's going to happen at this time and we got to come back here tomorrow. And we ended up catching a bunch of big fish out of there. But it was like, he just knew by the way that
yeah.
like they
I
was
call
setting
him the fish whisperer.
he's a different dude. I've never met anyone as naturally talented at fishing.
Yeah.
He's crazy.
So have you noticed like because down here with forward facing sonar, like before it came out, everybody beat the banks,
Yeah.
and like I mean the ledge bite has been, I'd say on Chickamauga, I mean the ledge bite's probably been what 15 10 15 years that people really kind of picked up on the ledge bite. But once the forward facing sonar, especially like this year, I really noticed it more that to where I did not get as many hits out on the ledge. I was starting to catch more fish up shallow again.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that up north to where I mean I don't know if it's because like those fish are just if they're like moving back shallow because of the forward facing sonar, or it's just that those fish are not being caught as much as what those out deep are.
I think the biggest thing, so I started noticing it too. So I got out and did kind of like the deep reef stuff on Saginaw Bay before it was sort of popular. Like it's very hard to do unless you have forward facing on some of these
Right.
areas. Um, but now with forward facing, dude, it's like you go out there in areas you would never see a boat. Like literally, you just wouldn't see a boat, and now there's 3 boats sitting on it trying to do the same thing.
Right.
Well, these fish are like not on those areas they used to be. They start moving around and getting on the weird stuff, or even to some extent, like you just have to go fishing for them again.
Right.
Like put the trolling motor down, pick up a crankbait, and go crank the shallow rock because those ones that were out here in the reefs, they just don't get on it like they used to get on it.
No.
Right.
And St. Clair, I noticed this with Caleb. In the springtime on St. Clair, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. Like I know Chick gets really busy. St. Clair, you got to be like crazy to go out there because there will be a boat within like 2 casts of you on either side.
Yeah.
And it's all in one real area. Well, every person has graphs on. And most people now have forward facing sonar. These fish are getting so hit by that. So, like, if you try to scope a fish on St. Clair in the spring, like, those fish are smart enough not to get caught. So, my buddy Durds and I guess Caleb, too, when we were fishing together, we recognized if you just shut that graph off, your catch rate goes up so much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because
it's crazy how fast it's happening.
he told me that I went out with him after one time that he went up there with you, and he was like, he said, "Watch this." We found some fish on a ledge, it's on a community hole, and so they get pounded anyways. But we found some fish, and he was like, "Watch this." He threw it out there, kept it on them, and they did not do anything. And then he turned it away from them. That's all he done was just turn it away from them. Threw that exact same cast, and wham! And I was like, "You got to be kidding me!"
These fish are getting so smart to it so fast, and I think it's going to totally change. Like you're going to see guys become shallow water guys again, or stealth guys.
Yeah.
Like that rib I told you where Caleb caught that 7. We'd literally get in the water, we'd run to our first spot, we'd check the depth, and then all the graphs in the boat would go off.
Yeah.
Because like everyone's running down the bank with forward facing sonar on. Like now you have guys running 6 forward facing graphs on their boat, like 3 on the trolling motor, one's perspective, one forward, and one on a pole mount. You have a guy running it at the console, so like as they're idling along, they can scan. Then you have forward facing off each side of your boat, as instead of side imaging. Like, I understand if I'm fishing for $100,000 or plus, probably gonna have to do that to compete. But dude, I think the guy that is willing to kind of put some of the electronics to the side, like use forward facing as a learning tool to understand, like, hey, they're fishing in this area. Like, I know they're here. I don't need to rely on it now. Like, those are the guys that are going to start to dominate. And maybe you won't see it on the professional level because there's too much money there now. But
right now, another question is, what is your bait of choice when you are using your forward facing sonar?
I throw a small swim bait a lot. Like I'm not one. I say this. I really am not like a Demiki rigger or like a casting to fish I see. Like I can do it, but for me, it's not my forte. Like some guys are really good at it, but most times it's like a 8 to 3/16 ounce ball head with a small swim bait on the back or a pintail bait. Or I throw a jerk bait a lot for those fish. I'll wait like a mega bass that sinks at like 1.5 feet a second, and I'll cast it out to those fish.
Now, when you're out searching for a group of fish with the forward facing sonar, do you catch yourself just holding the rod tip and the bait and just looking around instead of randomly casting, making unnecessary cast, or And do you keep your trolling motor on high when you're searching, or move pretty quick, or you have a slower approach to it?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty fast. So I just downsized to a 18-foot champion, and I put a Garmin Force on it, which is like super fast. Anyways, I find myself flying like a mile and a half to 2 miles an hour, like half speed now, and so I will cover so much water looking for these fish, and it's like for me the easier ones are when there's multiple fish, but I really look for them on a piece of structure. Like I'm not in the middle of a basin, like just praying I see a bait ball. I'm like going down and looking for an inside turn, or looking for, the bottom to be get a little bit harder and look for those fish suspended up. Like that's to me the easiest way to locate these fish because
Yeah.
it makes them patternable.
Right.
Um,
Now,
Now,
do
I was gonna say
with
when you're looking, when you're out there searching, is it easier to find the balls of bait fish versus bass? What do you pick out first? Is it easier to find the
um,
balls of bait fish, or could you pick out one or two bass just as easy?
you can pick out the bait fish. So for me, I'm looking for the bass. Like if I see bait, like it doesn't really mean a whole lot. I'm looking for the bass. There are a couple lakes around here where I know the kind of bait they key on, and then I look for that because then you can pretty much always say, okay, well, I know that's a big pot of bluegill, and then there's some really small bait fish that suspends above the bluegill and the bluegill get below it, then the bass are there. Like I know on that body of water what it is. But I also have some lakes where like you're literally following around a 10 to 12 fish school of smallmouth trying to catch, six of
right,
them
I got you.
before they
right,
disperse. So it just kind of depends on the lake and the way it sets up. And those smallmouth on the lake where I'm just looking for bass, like they don't really set up on bait. Like they'll
Right.
be no bait until they find it.
I got you.
right. Now, uh, I seen. I can't remember. I want to say it was Zona that said this. Um, that like when he goes and he's fishing like the Great Lakes or something like that, like he will not put, especially like if he's got a big school of smallmouth, he will not put the a smallmouth right back in right there. Like
Yeah.
he'll go to the back of the boat and put it in the back of the boat because he said like that other fish will just go straight back down to if you put it right there at the trolling motor, it'll go straight back down and then they just scatter. Have you noticed that?
Especially in the spring and the fall. Like when you have big schools of fish, I'm a big, big, big believer in this. And I'm not saying I've done this, but I'll just keep putting them in until I am done with the school. You'll end up with a live well full, and then you can let them go. But my opinion, and I've seen it happen enough times where I know it makes a difference. You catch a smallmouth and it comes off on the way to the boat, and that school is like done within 2 or 3 more casts. You
Right.
catch a smallmouth and you fighting it, and you get it in the boat, you do your thing, and you let it go. That school is done. Like either put it in a live well or do as best you can to get it away from that school. Put it off the back of the boat if you can't have. I mean, if you got 5 in the live well, but don't like the worst thing I think you can do is to put it right back down there. And I think it's a pheromone thing. I also think it's like if an alien were abducting me and I got released right away, like as I'm getting put up in the air, like I'm going back down to tell my buddies. Like,
Yeah, that crazy looking dude that's up above that water. You
yeah,
don't want to meet him.
there's someone up there with 2 arms and 2 legs.
That's right. That's right. And they all they want to do is just put their hand in my mouth.
Yeah, he just wanted to put his hand in my mouth and take a picture with me, kissing it.
that's
What's
that's
going on?
right. Yeah. So let's talk. We'll probably. I got a couple more questions on the sonar.
Yeah,
But I do want to get into uh, the do it molds though, and have you talk about
yeah,
it because that's. I mean, that's part of fishing that, I mean, if you're really wanting to kind of save some money, that you can kind of do that to save money. But, and it's also neat a little hobby that you can do just on the side, especially when you got the water's frozen or something like that and it's cold and
yeah,
you can just go out to the garage. Um, but because you actually pour your own. jigs and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I use some stuff from Beast Coast. So like they're really finesse. They have a OW Sniper jig that I use a lot, but I'll pour my own skipping jigs on a Sparky head. Like I pour all my own blade baits. And really where it started was this concept of like, I know what I like and I hate paying $6 for a blade that I know is going to get down there in those rocks and break it off. Like I
Right.
hate doing that. So I basically said, okay, these are the three molds that I know I'm going to use a lot of. I bought those three molds and basically made enough baits that I felt like I made my money's worth. And I buy
Yeah.
three more molds, and so I have a ton now. Like drop
Yeah.
shot
I noticed that
weights.
right after you started doing that, Alex done a video right afterwards,
Yeah,
and he had it. I mean, on the deck of his boat, and he was just pulling out all these molds, and
yeah,
so he got into it as well. And
yeah.
so,
It's
but
an awesome hobby. I mean, you can save a lot of money. I think the biggest thing to know is like there is a startup cost to it. And so you don't want to just be like, okay, I'm going to buy all these molds. You really want to say, okay, what do I use? Like,
right,
what do I want to customize? Or what do I know that I like? Because then you can really dial it in. And like, I
yeah,
make
and
what I consider the
it's
best jig
cost
ever.
efficient for you, right?
Yeah,
To be able to
exactly.
do that. Now, do you happen to have? Can they order those online, or
Yep.
do you have like affiliate link for that?
Yeah, I can. What I'll do is I'll chat you that affiliate link. But
Yeah.
essentially, it's just going to take you to the Do It Molds website. Um, and then whatever you order in through there, like it'll just track that I'm the one that sent you there. But that'd be awesome. I guess if I were to give people some advice onto like a couple good molds to start with, or if you're looking to just get into it, they actually have a starter kit where you can get your lead melter, you can get some lead, you can get a couple different molds, you can get all the components in a starter kit, which is a really good way to get started. Um, or you can just kind of pick out what you like. My favorite mold is the Sparky jig mold, especially up here in the north. It's a compact jig. You can pour up to like a half ounce or 3/4 ounce. So I use that one a ton. I use a blade bait mold a ton, and then I use
So you're talking my kind of fishing right there.
yeah.
People, I think I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the blade bait is the most misused bait that is out there because people think that it's just a wintertime bait. When I've caught tanks during the summertime burning a blade bait.
It's one of the best ways to catch big fish all year long. Like anytime they're on, I fish it on the bottom pretty much exclusively. But there's so many ways you can fish a blade. Like there's so many techniques where you can use a blade, and it's just
Oh,
yeah,
there's really not a bad way to fish it as long as when you're doing whatever and you feel that blade vibrate, you're doing all right.
yeah.
So
Well, and tactical bassing has kind of talked about that a lot too, especially recently, where they talk about fishing a blade up in the column, or they'll take and they'll fish a really small blade when they're fishing around small bait fish. Like there's so many really good ways to fish a blade that I just think it goes overlooked.
well, see, I seen something I guess about a month ago that these guys I think they were in Missouri or something like that, and they took like the small like line through floats like you would use for like brim
Yeah,
fishing,
yeah,
and they bobber stopped it probably about like 8 feet from the bait, and so it kept it elevated up in, and they were like drifting or not drifting, but they were using the trolling motor to troll to kind of keep a good pace, and so it kept it elevated, and they were yanking some big old fish just doing that. I was like, I've never thought of it.
no, no, and I
That
never would
that
think of
works
that.
better when you get a windy, choppy day too, because that wave action with that bobber to actually keep that blade bait moving up and down and just
Yeah.
gyrating around. The way I used to do that in South Florida with soft plastics in the thick reeds and stuff like that. When you have a big wave rolling in on the bank and there's fish on the bank, take a soft plastic and put it on a shiner bobber and just toss it in the reeds, and those waves actually will make that soft plastic worm just keep bouncing up and down like this, almost like you're jigging it with your rod tip when you pitch it or flipping in the reeds. Just sit there and waiting, and all of a sudden that bobber just dart off. And it's amazing. I mean, we used to do that in South Florida, just using the wave action to work that bobber up and down. I guess what Colin's saying, you can kind of do that the same thing with the blade bait. I never thought about doing that with the blade bait though. But
yeah, I never thought of that until I seen them, and I mean it makes sense. I mean, especially if you're trying to keep it in 8 foot of water,
right.
that. But I had never thought about doing that. Do y'all? But do y'all throw an A rig much up there?
Yeah, I kind of got onto an A rig. I don't throw it a ton, but I'll throw it a little bit. I got onto a clear A rig last year, and I've been playing with it. And I know Saxton has the Stealth Lures rig that's coming out, but it's just not one of those baits that I get on really good. I know when there's bites that it's crazy, and I've had a couple days where it's crazy, but I just don't throw it enough.
How many hooks are you allowed to use up where you are?
You can use up to, well, I think you can use technically up to 6, but I use 5 hooks.
How many have you ever caught multiples, or how many did we caught at once?
Like one time I caught multiple, and it was pretty cool. But
you ever caught more than 2, 3, or 4?
No, I wish I had 2 hooked on a square bill this year, and that was the coolest thing I ever did. But no,
so, I got Benjamin sent me his link, and I've got it down on the bottom right there. I will put it in the description as well, so we can make sure if you're looking to do making some jigs and stuff for yourself, make sure you hit that as well. Just and help a brother out. We
YouTube channel as well. He has some awesome videos out there on his YouTube channel.
That was going to be my next question is to tell them how they can actually follow you. Because right now we got 1,100 on here, so
dang.
Let's if we can get half of you guys to go follow Benjamin, we will. He'll be stoked.
Hey, you do a Facebook page as well, or we can find you a Facebook page?
No, I had a Facebook page for a little while and just kind of took it down. Well, let's be honest, I got hacked on Facebook, so that page went away. And then you can follow me on Instagram and YouTube. It's at BRNOWAK _fishing. So at R Nowak _fishing.
We'll put that in the description as well. Make sure you get out there and follow him. I mean, like I say, I actually just subscribed to it a couple of days ago, but man,
I appreciate it.
Going through some of the videos, and yeah, he has some awesome. And some of the videos out there too. It's kind of some teaching videos as well. Where get on there if you're wanting to learn how to do something. I'm sure Benjamin has a video to kind of explain how it works and how he fishes it, how he uses it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of northern focused stuff. So to give you a little bit different perspective than maybe some of the southern techniques, but I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's a teaching channel for the most part, and then just some fishing, going out and just taking you guys on the boat with me. But,
yeah, and that's the main thing. Like I get so much out of just watching somebody fish. I mean, because you could tell me all day long, like Colin, you need to do this with it, and I could try to do what you're saying, but if I see all right, this is what he's doing. This is his retrieve on it. Oh yeah, like so about every third reel he's popping it or whatever. I catch that a whole lot more than you just saying, "Hey, you need to do this."
Well, that's one of the funny things is like the YouTube game is put out high energy, fast paced content, right? Like if you want to be like a poppy YouTuber, you got to put out high energy, fast paced content, real quick cuts all the time. My favorite YouTube videos to watch of fishing YouTube to like learn a technique or watch how someone breaks it down. Like I want some uncut footage. I want to see the way that guy's working that bait. Like where's he throwing it? What's he doing? How's he fishing it? So one of my most recent videos is like 26 minutes long, and it's like you see me throw a blade out, and then you see it sit on the bottom and hop it like twice. and then I just hold it there, and then a fish bites it. Like, it's super boring content unless you actually want to learn how to fish a certain technique or something. And that's not all my content, but that's the kind of content I prefer to.
Well, the thing is like, because I use the videos and stuff. Like, I'll go back and I'll look at it because, like, I caught one last last year that was like 964, and I'm like, but I told my dad, I was like, I threw it out up against the bank, and I had the chest camera going, but I had one on the back stern going. The one on the back stern was the one that I was really able to see what was going on. And I told my dad, I was like, yeah, it was real quick. It was right up on the bank, but then going back watching that video, I was almost halfway back to the boat. And before is when that hit. Actually, I've been able to pick things up, like, it's been able to see and like, oh, this is really what happened. And then I was able to go back that later on and duplicate that bite and realize, because I was giving up because I was thinking that it was closer to the bank, and I gave up on it when I was bringing it back through the strike zone.
Isn't that super interesting? Like, when you catch a fish, it's like, man, I caught that fish when I was dead sticking a blade. And then you go back and you look at the video, and what you don't realize is, yeah, you thought you were dead sticking it because you're jabbering with your buddy, but what you were doing is, like, you were lifting that bait and you weren't paying attention, so you were lifting it a little bit faster, and, like, you miss those things. So
Yeah.
I go back and do the same thing.
So let's see. To another question on the forward facing sonar, do you think that fishing profession, like the professional tournaments, will change the aspects on the forward facing sonar?
I don't know if they'll change the rules. I think I love forward, like, personally, I enjoy going out and I like using it as a tool to catch me some fish. Like, it's kind of fun to use, and there's a lot of people who maybe have never used it before or are kind of against it, but it is kind of a cool tool and it's fun. I think there has to be a limit though. Like, it's too new for us to be able to say it has no impact on our fisheries. Like, I'm seeing the impact that it's having on some of these fish that are getting smart to forward facing already. I'm seeing what it's doing to our ability to catch fish that have never been caught before. So, like, yeah, there's going to be studies that say, okay, the catch rate's the same, or the size rate is actually, decreasing, like, or whatever it might be. It's too early to say. I'm more concerned about the 5, 10, 15-year impact if we don't have some sort of regulation that says, okay, you can only have, a certain, maybe one transducer or something.
Right.
From that
or it can only,
perspective.
like, you
And
can
then,
only
like,
have it maybe going 100 feet out instead of, to be
yeah.
able.
I mean,
I think that may be as well. I think that there's too much money in it for them to
and you don't want them
delete
to
it.
limit the technological advancement that's going to come from Garmin and Humminbird and Lowrance putting all this money behind it, right? But I do think, like, you can't have 6 transducers on a boat. Like, you lose some of the purity of fishing. What's going to happen is these guys are just going to become machines who turn off their brains and the intuition of bass fishing. They drop that boat in the lake and they never get off idle for all 3 days of practice because they're just looking for fish chasing big balls of bait around the lake. Like, there still has to be some intuition and some knowledge that goes into bass fishing. And I'm not saying it takes all of it away, because you still have to know, like, okay, that fish was set up on this piece of cover, and that's why the bait was there, and that's why I was able to use my forward facing. Like, you still have to have some of that. But also, like, you're taking away the movements of fish and, like, the intuition that says, okay, man, I got to trust my gut. Like, I got to go down this pocket because I know the water's warmer over there. Like, there should be bass pushing up shallow. Like, I want to see a combination of both pieces. And when you start to put that much technology on a boat, I just think you're taking too much away from bass fishing.
Yeah. Well, and, like, because we get it asked to us all the time about it, and I tell people, like, forward facing sonar, like, if you was to go back, like, when side imaging came out, it was the same thing. People said the exact same thing about it's not fair. Side imaging is not fair. But then now you cannot buy a unit that does not have side imaging on it, and I was like, it's just going to be part of the game, and like these kids that's in high school and the collegiate, they are picking it up so quick,
They're so good.
and I mean, we've got some buddies of ours that one of them won the state championship here in Tennessee this past year as a junior, and we talked to him about it, and it's just amazing, and just seeing, and he does videos and stuff, but just to watch them fine tune that in, uh, is just amazing. And then once they get on them, they are on them.
And I'm not saying it doesn't take skill to be good with forward facing, because like you're seeing it. There's guys that are better with it than other guys because they put in more time or whatever. I'm not saying like that, but I am saying that it does change the way that a person fishes.
Yeah, exactly. Have you planned a trip to come back down here to fish either with Alex or Caleb?
I don't know if I'll make it down this year. I was talking to Caleb about coming down in February, back in like November. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come down and do the live bait thing with you, and we'll get on some big fish. I didn't make it happen. It's just too much going on with, the family stuff at home. The girls are in school now and too much. So maybe next year. And then Caleb's been talking about coming up in May. He normally makes like a May trip or, a June trip up. So we'll see if that happens. Alex is fishing a tournament up here on Saginaw Bay in August. So I might go to Houston. I have the ability to get to Houston halfway easily through work. So I might go down there and fish with a couple buddies. But no, it's just like this year it's sort of like, like what if I fish, I fish. Like the weather's already warm here, so we might get fishing in the next handful of weeks.
Now how, when is y'all spawn period for smallmouth up there?
On St. Clair, you're talking like early May, like first, second week of May. When you start to talk about our northern lakes, it basically will go from, for smallmouth, like the week before Memorial Day all the way through July in some places.
Right.
Because that water stays so cold. Like when you get on the Great Lakes, it'll be late July, August, and it's like 58 degrees.
What's the prime water temperature for a good spawn?
Like 50, I would say like 58 degrees is like when you really want to be there on a Garmin. On a Humminbird, it's like 60.
Right. Yeah, that's like we've noticed here. People always say the magic number is 60, but I've seen it where they started at 57, 58 degrees, but I also seen it where they did not start till 65, 66 degrees. But when the smallmouth, though, here will spawn typically around 54, 55 here. They're usually about 3 weeks before our largemouth will spawn.
That's crazy. I guess that's true on our like mixed lake fisheries, where your smallmouth will go first, but on the Great Lakes, I mean it's right around that 58 degree. Pretty much that full moon in May is like when you want to be on the water. A few days before that full moon in May, and it's dumb out there.
Right. So I do have to ask you, because you said something about fishing with Caleb.
Yeah.
And did you see that 14.6?
Dude, insane. Insane. I think he sent me a picture of his scale, and to myself and my buddy Nathan, he's like, check out what I caught. Just super nonchalant, like.
Did he tell you what he was? He said that he was just dragging, like the bait. He was really just dragging it behind his clients.
And, yeah.
And it was
like, I just had like an extra line out. I do that a lot when I'm fishing with clients. That way, if something bites it.
Yeah, he's like, and he said, because it did not act like it was a fish. He said, I thought I hung the log that I was coming up over. And I said, that wasn't the log. So,
he's incredible.
I
set the hook on bottom, and all of a sudden the bottom starts moving off.
pulled the lake out.
We got a question. What is your most memorable fish catch?
Before I was like really knew what I was doing smallmouth fishing, I found this offshore grass on the Great Lakes. Um, I was throwing a crankbait, and I had this school located on this piece of grass. So throw it out there, wind it back, and I'm like coming up towards the boat, and I go to rip that crankbait to come up, and I rip it up, and I get bit. And I had like a rod and a half's worth of line out, so I just cranked the handle one time, turned, and flipped it in the boat, and it was a 6'9". The biggest smallmouth I ever caught.
And then Caleb comes up there and
Catches a
crushes a
7.
7.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
about right.
that was, I mean, there's been a lot of really cool catches. That's just the one that comes to mind. I also caught a 7. Well, this is a largemouth fish catch. It's actually a Caleb story. I used to film for the FLW tour, some guys on the tour. So I was down at Chickamauga. I was filming at Dayton Boat Dock. And Caleb and his buddy Brian Speller were like, hey, dude, you need to take this Shine Glide in this swim bait rod and just like throw it around Dayton Boat Dock for a couple casts after you're done filming. So it's in the morning. All the guys launch. And I go down, and there's a big drain by Dayton Boat Dock. I'm throwing that glide around, and it's in, I think it was May, maybe April. I'm throwing that glide around, and there's a stick up just kind of coming like at an angle out of the water. So I throw this glide up next to the stick up, and it comes right past the edge of the stick up. I couldn't do it again if I tried. And then all of a sudden I see this fish come out and grab the bait. Like just, you see it kind of come over the top of the bait, and it's just gone. So I set the hook. I get it to the bank, and there's no way to get this fish up on the bank. So I'm like almost knee deep in the water, grab this fish out, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, that is huge. I'm like, that's got to be like a 7-pounder. It's got to be like a 7-8 pounder. There's some guys across eating breakfast at the Dayton Boat Dock. They're like, oh my God, that's huge. That's a giant fish. And then all of a sudden this guy rolls up in a golf cart, and he goes, dude, we got to get a scale on that fish. And I'm like starting to wonder how big this fish actually is. So we get it over there, and Dayton Boat Dock didn't have like a certified scale or anything. Mm-mm. So we put it in the release tanks at the FLW, or not release tanks, but the weigh-in tanks. And we're waiting around, and they're like, well, Bob Taylor's in there. He says you can just go weigh it on the stage. And I'm like, weigh it on the FLW stage? And he's like, yeah, just go weigh it up there real quick. We're curious how big it is at this point. So we get it on the scale. It went 9.5.
Woo!
Crazy. All because I made like 10 casts with a Shine Glide that Caleb was like forced me to take.
That's crazy. So, well, we've had you on here an hour and 7 minutes, almost an hour and 8 minutes, but we won't keep you too much longer.
No worries.
We do. Let's see. When is your next? Do you know when your next episode is for?
Uncharted Waters.
Uncharted Waters. Yeah, I had another question pop up.
No, that's okay. It'll probably come out next week, next Thursday. I'm just trying to get the balls rolling. Like you guys know, with the podcast, you kind of have to get it going and get in the routine. So it'll probably come out next Thursday morning at 6 a.m. I'm doing it with my buddy Nathan. So
yeah, you guys gotta watch his podcast, guys. I just watched his first episode earlier, or actually listened to it on Spotify earlier today, and he had Alex Rudd, I think, was your guest on your first one, but you done an awesome job, dude, on that podcast, Uncharted Waters. But you got to listen to it. And
thank you very much.
And when did you say the next episode is going to be aired?
It'll come out the 8th of February at 6 a.m.
Remember, write that on your calendar, guys. 8th of February, Uncharted Waters. It's a podcast that you guys got to listen to. It's really, really well done.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a little bit different take than, because I've been around Alex's podcast for a long time. Like I hop on that Friday nights with him sometimes. It's a little different take on like being in the outdoor space. And you guys know, as outdoorsmen, like there's something therapeutic about fishing and being outdoors and just being and experiencing it. So like, how do I take people's stories and share it? And so like Alex really opened up on there, just kind of told his story of how he got into fishing, like what it's done for him. And he's been through quite a lot over the last year and a half to like kind of just like him open up and explain like his relationship with the outdoors and what it's kind of, or how it's kind of gotten him to where he is today. So it's a little different take. It's not so much fishing related. It's more so just,
Yeah.
getting to know people and their story and kind of how we use the outdoors. All of us
Right.
as outdoors men and women.
And also, like, guys, if you don't have nothing going on Friday nights, I think it's at 7 o'clock our time. It might be 6 o'clock. Um, Alex Rudd Fishing Podcast. That is, and especially they go into more details on baits. I mean, if they geek out on that podcast on some baits.
Yeah.
If I want to go learn something, figure out what's new bait that's coming up, I definitely go and listen to it because they Benjamin and Alex, and there ain't no telling who he's going to have on the podcast
Lots of
either.
rabbit holes too. Like we'll talk about anything. We'll talk about some baits, then we'll talk about some Bigfoot, and then we'll talk about some barbecue. Like it could be anything on there.
And now you're talking right up Collins Avenue with barbecue.
Oh man, we if you think that, I mean, we kind of went down a little bit of rabbit holes with here, but it's
It's
nothing
a
compared.
different level.
Yeah, it's they. I've what he's talked about. I've heard him talk about Bigfoot, UFOs. I mean, there's nothing when you got the bearded guy on. There ain't no telling what's going to come out.
That's right.
So, but Norman, let's kind of wrap this up. And right now we've got 12:28 on here. So
That's crazy. I appreciate everyone for watching. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's been a
we
blast.
try to just have just more or less like a laid back conversation, just talking fishing and because to me we want you to feel like you've known us forever, and so and I think that I've we've thought so many people on here. I can't ask every single question that's coming on here, but we do have a guy that real quick that says, "Are you mostly St. Clair, Erie, mouth of the river, Huron,
Yeah, so
or
most of my fishing is on Huron or northern Michigan. So like up by Traverse City, Alpena, just kind of north of mid Michigan.
so?" But
That question came from Eric Evans, which is actually one of the part of our title sponsor, which is IBAS 360. So thanks, Eric, for that question.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but he goes up to Michigan and fishes up there quite a bit. He's actually from Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and
So he knows smallmouth then.
yeah, he knows smallmouth.
He's actually got a
But
chance to come down here and fish with us a couple times, and I'm going to meet up with him when I go to Florida in a couple weeks. He's going to come down and fish with me for a couple days down in Florida. So I look forward to hanging out with him down there. But yeah, he's a pretty cool dude.
That's awesome.
So, but Norman, why don't you ask our last questions and we'll let.
Question. Yeah, man. First of all, you know what, Benjamin? Really appreciate you coming on tonight with us, and it's been a pleasure, man. Just hearing some of your stories and and again, get out and check out his YouTube channel, guys. He has some killer video out there, and also if you're interested in his mold, we'll actually put his YouTube channel and where you could actually check out his baits that he pours in the description of this episode as well. But you know what, Benjamin, we have a question we usually end the show with, and it's kind of became a pretty expected question by all of our viewers. But anyway, if you were to have one person to fish with you for the day, this person could be passed away or it could still be with us. Who would that person be, or why would you want to fish with him for the day on your boat?
This was a great one. So, probably my grandpa. So, my grandpa got me into fishing a long time ago. Like before I knew what bass fishing was, tournament fishing, like got me into fishing. But then he got Alzheimer's when I was 16 years old. So like I grew up fishing with him till I was about 10. Then I dedicated all my time. Like literally, I thought a 5'6" kid was going to go play NHL goalie. It didn't happen. Let me just tell you, it didn't happen. So until I was 17, I didn't fish with him. Like, we just didn't fish, but he had already developed Alzheimer's at that point. So, like, I would love to just fish with him and just kind of go hang with him again.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I do have to ask a question since you brought up hockey.
Yeah.
And our friendship can depend on the answer that you give.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Are you a Red Wings fan?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's no other team. Red Wings or die, even when they stink.
Yeah. Well, see, I grew up in Nashville. I'm a huge Nashville Predators fan.
Okay.
But what's funny?
Not the worst fan.
No, but I mean, I with driving over the road and stuff, I've been able to go to a lot of places. I've been to the Joe, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But not to have like the loudest arena, like with the fans, and I think really what it is, I don't know if it's that they're just so much louder, but they built that arena to do concerts in. I mean, you're in Nashville, you're gonna have all these country, and so it just like rumbles through the arena, so it seems like it's louder. But
I've heard that playoff game where everyone had all the catfish. I think they had.
yeah, well, they got that from
insane.
I was there. They got that from the Red Wings because like when Norman the Red Wings will throw, like if they score first, they'll throw a squid or an octopus or something like that out onto the ice. Well, when Nashville got started 25 years ago, like Saturn, the people from Saturn came from Detroit, came down. And so like all their big wigs and everybody was from Detroit. So they would like have season tickets for the Predators. They'd all decked out in Nashville Predator stuff. And then when the Red Wings come in 3 or 4 times, because they were in the same division, they'd come into town 3 or 4 times. I mean, that whole place went red when the Red Wings came in.
Yeah.
But when the Predators, and they tried to, like, I've never seen a team try to like imitate another team like what the Predators did to the Red Wings, in which it was a love-hate because back then they had Nicholas Lindstrom,
rivalry.
Right, and Datsuk. I mean, they had the team, and I've never seen like hockey to where it was like tape to tape. They were going. I mean, they were fundamentally sound. They would beat you on their backside. They didn't care. They were just that good. But the first time they went to the playoffs, they happened to play the Red Wings in that first ever playoff game, and so they played at the Joe, and then when they came to Nashville. Somebody brought like a 20-pound catfish and chucked that there.
Dude, so I will never forget it. That rivalry used to be like other than back in like the 90s with the Avalanche, like that was the rivalry of the 2000s.
Oh yeah, and it didn't matter. I mean, they could be playing back to back, but then that was a physical game. And I mean, the Red Wings did get the best part of them then, but it was a heck of a show to go watch them.
I've never been to an NHL game, but I could imagine the fans in the stands could probably get just as rowdy as the players on the ice too.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
But when you said, what did you say, 5'9" or something like that?
Yeah.
Goalie. Well, we go to the Knoxville Ice Bears just because the ticket price is a whole lot cheaper, and then they fight a lot more. So the Ice Bears has a dude that is 6'10", and I mean he's a defenseman, and it's like when he reaches out, it's like he covers half the ice. It's just, I mean, but then when he tries, all he does, like when there's a fight, like he just wraps the person up. He can't fight them because I mean they're a foot shorter there.
Dude.
So, but
we have a similar, like a lower tier league of hockey right by here, and it's just fun to go to games because they're like $12 for a ticket instead of.
Oh yeah, it's a good. it's a good family little outing to where you can take your family out, and it's a fairly inexpensive little deal to go, and it's a fun night. So,
Exactly.
and you get to see fights. I mean, you can't. Uh,
High
so,
pace fights and a
yeah.
lot of checking.
So, but other than that, guys, we're going to get off here. And Benjamin, brother, man, I'm thankful that we thank
Been
you
a
for
lot of
coming
fun.
on, and
Appreciate it.
hopefully we can get you back on here. And I guess Caleb's wife had something for him to do because he was going to come on here. He's like, I got to come. He told me this 3 weeks ago when I told him that you was coming on. He said, send me the link. I'm coming on. I'm going to, he said, I'm going to raise some cane with Benjamin.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
Kelly got home and his what, and the boss put her foot down and says, "This is your time tonight, buddy."
I love it.
So,
no, thank you guys for having me on. I'd love to come
Thanks,
back
man.
and just talk fishing and talk
Yeah.
whatever you want to talk. So
You
Heck
got
yeah,
me
brother.
wanting to. You got me wanting to. Me and Colin plan a trip up to your neck of the
I'm
woods.
serious. I'm serious. Just be like,
you tour us around your into the country.
I would love it. I would love
That'd
it.
be fun. That'd be awesome, man.
So, guys, again, I mean, we got a hair under 1,200 right now. Everybody just go and just hit that follow button on YouTube, Instagram, and so I want to hear from Benjamin tomorrow and be like, man, I just got 500 new subscribers. So
Yeah.
Got to blew up tonight.
Yep. So guys, thank you again for coming and watching, and we finally got us a northern guy on here to talk some smallmouths, and but we appreciate it, and look forward to the episode that we have coming up that we're going to film here tomorrow at the BASS headquarters because
That'll be in Birmingham, Alabama tomorrow.
Yeah. So, but guys, hope you live the passion, and we'll see you out on the water.
Passion, guys. Tight lines.